Hey, thanks for joining us for today's Spirecast. I really love the opportunity we have we get to hear from some of last year's conference speakers, but more importantly, we get to engage with some of our practitioners, some of the people who are actually leading. And one of the things we want to do is just make all of this actionable. I was always looking at ministry from the standpoint of, so how do we do this? What is next? I really was just a practitioner. And I love that that's what we're trying to do with Spirecast, is really give us ideas, tips. And today we've got Brad Tate joining us, and I love Brad. Brad's one of our capable leaders. He's at 242, and looking forward to Brad jumping in. Hey, Brad, you've been on the teaching team at 242. And you were there a while. Tell me, just give us a little bit of how long you've been there, what you've been doing, what you've been up to.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm one of the teaching pastors at 242 Community Church. We have 7 campuses in Southeast Michigan. I've been on staff for over about 15 years. And now my role is basically the weekend services. So I'm over the worship teams, the communication teams, and the arts team to help pull together our weekend services for all 7 of our campuses. And I preach pretty much every weekend at one of them. So I love doing it, and that's how I get to serve the Lord.
That's so awesome. And Brad was a part of our panel we did at this year's conference. We had a great time. One of my favorite memories, maybe we'll share, Brad, is just being at the restaurant, actually, and you ordering half the menu, I think. So, one of the things, today is Martin Luther King Day, and we're in a really challenging time, right? We've had COVID, we've had all the tension going around, some of the tragedies around the shootings that happened this year. We're in a political season that is so polarizing. Division is a reality, and whether it's around ethnic lines or racial lines or faith lines or social lines, it's a big deal. And I know you guys have done a lot of things there at 242 to cross some lines. But today we're going to get to hear from Efrem Smith, and I thought Efrem did a great job of challenging the church, challenging us as leaders. Nate Ross and Efrem did an interview, and Efrem spoke, and it was really powerful. When we come back, Brad, we're just going to chat about that, but let's watch this message from Efrem.
Spire Conference is honored to welcome Reverend Dr. Efrem Smith. Efrem is a pastor, consultant, sought-after speaker, and author. He is passionate about life transformation, racial righteousness, thriving churches, and community development. Efrem was the founding pastor of the Sanctuary Covenant Church, a multi-ethnic church in Minneapolis. Currently, Reverend Smith is the co-lead pastor of Bayside Church Midtown, a thriving and multi-ethnic community in Sacramento, California.
Hey, Spire, what an incredible place we are in right now, where we're going to be talking about the multi-ethnic church in a church that was a part of the Underground Railroad. And I'm here with Dr. Efrem Smith. What a joy it is to be with you and have you speak into this, especially in this historic place, in the town where I get a pastor, to know that this is an important conversation now. And this was an important conversation in 1852 as well. And the church was leading the way in this conversation. And today, the church needs to lead the way in what it looks like to be a multi-ethnic church. What's so unique about your perspective, you bring a perspective for us, not just about how we need to do justice and love mercy and walk humbly with God, you actually bring a perspective on how the church can actually measure what it looks like to be a multi-ethnic church. Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like, how you came up with that. I've never heard it been explained this way before.
Yeah, well, there is an assessment tool that the denomination I serve in, the Evangelical Covenant Church, uses to kind of look at how you move towards becoming more and more a multi-ethnic church. It was originally called the five-fold test, and now it's actually a six-fold test now. And then from there, I then developed within that 5 areas of ministry that the church can look at in terms of becoming more multi-ethnic. So let's start with the six-fold test. So as you're moving more and more towards becoming multi-ethnic, and let me define that for a minute. Because in a book called United by Faith, a group of Christian sociologists, they gave a measurement of how you know your church is multi-ethnic. And they said if the dominant group in your church is 80% or less, your church is multi-ethnic. Now, I think that's a gracious measurement, okay? I mean, because if I walk into a church and it's 80% black people, I'm gonna say that's a black church right there. That's a black church. If I walk into a church and it's 80% white, that's a white church right there, right? But there's something that Christian sociologists have discovered that 80% less is a tipping point where the minority group or groups begin to feel that they can have place, that they can have a voice, that they can belong in this community if the dominant group is 80% or less. But even with that gracious measurement, in 2003, when my wife and I planted a church in Minneapolis, the multi-ethnic church, based on that measurement, was only 7-8% in the United States of America. Today, it's about 35-36%. So it's definitely getting better. But I think when you think of the diversity of the United States of America, it should be more. So let's get to the six-fold test. So these are all words or phrases that start with the letter P. So the first is population. So when you're thinking about, is my church multi-ethnic? Are we on the way to being multi-ethnic? You start with population. And that measurement that I just gave is a way you can start. You can look at your attendance. You can do a survey. I'm very fortunate that I co-pastor a church in Sacramento, Bayside Church Midtown, that is 35% white, 30% African American, 20% Hispanic, 10% Asian, the rest other. So that means something. That's one place you can start is population. But if you want to go beyond simply being a diverse church to being a multi-ethnic and a reconciling church, you can't just look at who's coming on the weekend or, right now, who's showing up online. You also have to look at participation. So that's the next level. That's the next P. Who's participating? Who's serving on the greeting team? Who's serving on the worship team? Are people volunteering? Are they involved in small groups? Are they going from just attending to participating and making this church their home? The next then is power. So then that goes where the decisions are made. So whether it's your elder board, whether it's depending on the type of church, your deacons, your staff, your volunteer key leaders of important, crucial ministries are people of different ethnicities, different backgrounds. Are they in the places where decisions are made? There you go. So that's the next one. Then from there is purposeful narrative. Purposeful narrative is when you're telling the story of your church, is it a multi-ethnic, multicultural, Christ-centered story that's being told? So if you want to know somebody's purposeful narrative, look at their Facebook page, look at their Instagram, look at their Twitter. And so when you look at the pictures on somebody's social media, that tells you, are they on purpose living out a multi-ethnic reconciling story? And so for the church, if you look at the church's website, if you look at the images that the churches use in their children's ministry wing, the kind of books or resources that we use, the pictures we put up, that's purposeful narrative. And then if you get through those, then you become a pace-setting church where people all of a sudden look to you to learn how to become more diverse, more multi-ethnic, to look more like heaven. People go, I want to learn what you're doing. How'd you do that with your worship experience? How did you do that with your outreach ministry? And then the last P actually sounds like it could be the first, because every church is not in a mission field that is conducive to be very multi-ethnic. I mean, when I talked about how diverse Bayside Church Midtown is, well, we're in the heart of Sacramento. Sacramento is one of the most multi-ethnic, multiracial, multicultural cities in America. But if you're in a place where maybe it's, 60% white, or it's 80% white, or it's 64% African American, or it's majority Hispanic, this P is important. Practicing solidarity. Okay. And that's about bridge building to other churches. Okay. That's saying, hey, maybe across town, maybe 20 miles away, where are the places outside our immediate mission field that we can build relationships across ethnicity?
I know that's something where we're at right now. We're over 80% white in our town.
Yeah.
But just because that's the thing doesn't mean we don't need to be mindful of what else is going on and what God is trying to do in our town. And even where we're at, and probably where a lot of us are at who are watching this, you go 10 minutes away from here, out towards where I live, and it only gets more rural, and it only gets more white. But you go, that's just life. There's nothing wrong with that. But we're going, what's our mindset? What's our heart? Even if where we live isn't overly diverse, what's our heart with that?
Yeah, because your location doesn't take you off the hook from the Great Commission.
There you go.
So we're still called to make disciples of all nations. Yeah. And sometimes what happens is we can be we're in a locale that, let's say, is predominantly white and rural. Yeah. And then we're thinking about the Great Commission. And so we go, well, we're going to do this ministry in Cambodia, which is awesome. Yeah. Or we're going to do this ministry in Kenya, which is awesome. Or we're going to do this ministry in Mexico, which is awesome. But there's also some real places, in between, Indiana and Mexico, in between California and Cambodia, where you can actually be involved in Great Commission-like ministry. Yeah. Samaria is closer than you think. Yeah. And so we need to look at what are the ways God is calling us specifically to be a bridge between Jew and Gentile. And for us today, that's, building a bridge across race, across ethnicity. And if ever there was a time to do that, the time is now.
It's now. And through the church, leading the way. I know that's been a lot of the conversation we've had is nobody's necessarily looking to the church to speak into this. And we go, there's part of the recapturing. I know you've talked about this. We have to even recapture God's desire and imagination for diversity.
Yes.
That diversity wasn't a result of sin or something we just had to deal with. Diversity was what was the thought in the very beginning. Chat a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we have to have an ancient future mindset on this. And what I mean by that is you look at the book of Acts, and I mean, right away in the beginning, the apostles, the Jewish Christ followers, they're saying to the resurrected Jesus, so they're asking the question, so are you going to restore the kingdom of Israel now? Yeah. And he's got something more in store for them than that. This is a supernatural, otherworldly kingdom of God mission. Yeah. And it's Jew and Gentile. So the first phase is they have to work that out in a multicultural way just amongst Jewish followers. So if you look at Acts chapter 6, you have the Hellenistic Jews and the Hebraic Jews, and the Hellenistic Jews have a complaint. They're saying when the food is being distributed, our widows are being overlooked. Yeah. They're basically saying Hellenistic Jews' lives matter. Yeah. And the Hebraic Jews didn't say, well, all Jewish lives matter. They said, no, we need to do something about this. And they actually did it in a way that empowered the Hellenistic Jews themselves, because Hellenistic Jews like Nicanor and Stephen actually become part of the group that some church traditions call deacons to actually meet that need. So the complaint was heard, it wasn't rejected, and it was responded to in an empowering way. And then all of a sudden we get from Acts 6 to Acts 10, where now it's that bridge building of Jew and Gentile. Will Peter go to the house of Cornelius? And so we need to reclaim that multi-ethnic, multicultural, Christ-centered heritage that ignited the Christ-following movement, ignited the church. And we need to look forward to Revelation 7:9, a multitude that no one can count from every nation, tribe, people, and language around the throne. And could it be that a crucial part of the mission of the church, which is connected to the Great Commission and the greatest commandment, is that we are to, when all possible, look like a glimpse of heaven. The church should function as a sneak preview of the kingdom we're going to reside. And this might be breaking news, so Wolf Blitzer isn't here, but we have some breaking news. There will be no Baptist, Lutheran, Methodist, Pentecostal sections in heaven. There will be no black divisions, white divisions, Hispanic, Asian divisions, and there won't be an American section in heaven. And so why not begin to operate now as kingdom citizens, as reconcilers, as ambassadors of God's kingdom whenever possible, missionally in our local communities and beyond.
Let's take the final couple minutes here and get real practical. I know you're helping Bayside, fastest growing church in America right now. Walking through this, tell us a few things that you're doing practically so that you're going, hey, here's some ways just to begin to practice this out in a tangible way that you guys are doing this in your local setting.
Well, one, I think teaching is important. We need to preach and teach the Bible for what it truly is. It is God's story. It is our story. But the Bible is the most multicultural, multi-ethnic piece of literature you'll ever put your hands on. And it's the story of God. It's central. It's authoritative. It's God-breathed, but it's so much more diverse than we present it at times. And so when we teach and preach the Bible and we allow the Holy Spirit to show us direct application points, to preach in an expository way, but make direct applications, God will give us solutions for this moment, for a pandemic, for racial unrest, for brokenness and injustice, for the needs right now for reconciliation, transformation, and empowerment in Jesus' name. If we preach and teach the Bible well, the answers are there. Two, I think it's important to gather the folks that are the key leaders in your church, to gather the folks that represent diversity in your church right now, and let them speak into the vision, the mission, the methods of your church without compromising the fundamental essentials of what it means to be the church. For us at Bayside, this has meant developing a diversity task force. This has meant us making sure that we show that our commitment to diversity, our commitment to reconciliation and biblical justice is deeply connected to the purpose, the enduring purpose and mission of our church. Because unfortunately, one, there are some that if the church that they know hasn't been diverse, once you start talking about diversity and reconciliation and justice, there are some that think, oh my gosh, are you pulling our church away? Am I losing the church that I've come to love? Are we going away from the gospel? Are we going away from the Bible? And so that's why biblical teaching is important. But then I also think it's important for us to reclaim terms and words that have been hijacked or that we allowed to be hijacked, like justice. Justice is biblical. It's deeply connected to righteousness. And in this moment, this is not a moment for us to go, oh, if we say justice, that's Marxism, that's socialism. Oh, that's going to pull us away from the gospel. No, what we need to do is to reclaim biblical justice, to reclaim God's mission, heart, and mandate for the most vulnerable, for the oppressed, for the outcast, for the marginalized, because as we love, tend to, minister to, and empower the most vulnerable around us, it is a distinctive of what it means to be in covenant with God.
Yeah, very cool. Appreciate the word today. Hopefully that's helpful for you as you guys talk about taking your next step of embracing the calling that God has on us as his pastors and followers of him.
Brad, I just love Efrem's intentionality. I mean, he's always been a practitioner, right? But he's also brilliant in how he approaches this. If you have any comments or questions, throw those over into the chat for us. So we'd love to catch those. But Brad, you're an intentional leader as well, and I know 242 has really focused on how do we become, in some practical ways, a multi-ethnic church. Just give me some reaction to what you heard there, what you guys are doing. Kind of lace that together for me.
Yeah, I mean, I love Efrem. He's a genius and just an oak when it comes to preaching. He's such a solid man of God. Some of the things he said there was so true. One thing that we keep in the forefront of our mind, and we're actually even talking about with our staff, is what Efrem kind of said at the end there, is the close relationship with justice and righteousness. And I honestly believe this is where society's kind of losing the mark when it comes to this whole race conversation, is because not all of society is righteous. Righteous is being right in the eyes of God, first and foremost, and then right in the eyes of those around us. And then justice is, we all know what justice is. It's, it's being just for, anything that you do. And so what tends to happen is sometimes we tend to remove those things apart from one another. But when you do that, it's highly problematic for both sides. I love what the psalmist says, Psalm 89:14. It says, righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne, talking about God. It says, steadfast love and faithfulness go before you. So the foundation of the throne of God is this righteousness and justice. And where we are as a society is, I believe, I guess my own personal belief, I believe the majority of people want justice. When we see what happened with police brutality, we see what happens with these type of things. Majority of people want justice. I think the minority of people want righteousness. So as a society who's largely not Christian, United States of America, they may profess Christianity, but they, as far as living to the full tenements, we're screaming for, a lot of times society is screaming for justice, but we're not amplifying righteousness to the same level. And when you seek justice without righteousness, that's how you tear down statues. That was a great quote I heard from Dele Akwabi. He's a pastor in Cincinnati. And he said that, and I was like, wow, that's so true. Because when you want justice without righteousness, then you say, well, I want to take down this Confederate statue because it's unjust that it's up. But it's not right to destroy property. And so the side who's all about those statues and loves those statues, they may say, well, you're being unjust to us. Because the truth is, with the lack of righteousness, injustice gets passed back and forth. So the question we have to answer is, how do we address the unjustness of racism while holding to the righteousness of being followers of God? And then how can we do that and be effective for the kingdom?
Well, I actually love how you make that distinction, because, I hadn't married those two together like that. And the fact that if we're just pursuing justice, that line can move, right? Because what's just in one decade may not be just in another decade. But righteousness becomes the rule in which the measurement, the line we hold, the anchor we hold to that. And I really do think that has something to do with the churches who have been more effective at reaching across their community, right? So if you come to our community here out in Colorado, when I moved here, we were primarily a white community. Now we're almost split in a Latino community as well. And I've watched as we have, had to be very intentional about building bridges, how we did staffing, how we focus that. But I also know there was a real measurement around reaching the most vulnerable. I loved Efrem's line about that a church will do that. You start crossing some lines. And I know you guys build bridges into your city. Give me some practical ways you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, all of our campuses are in different communities. So we have some campuses in a much more urban community, like our Taylor campus, our Ann Arbor campuses, Livonia, like that. But we have campuses also in towns like Saginaw, Michigan, and Brighton, Michigan, which are predominantly Caucasian communities. And so one thing we talk about as a staff is, what Efrem kind of talked about is, being aware of those P's that he kind of walked through: the population, participation, the power, purposeful narrative, these type of things. So we think about that when we put together our messaging, because our messaging is not just for the people who's coming to our church. Our messaging is for the world. And we want to show people the kingdom of God, not just show them our communities, but you can only have the resources that are available in your community. So we don't want to be fake about it. That's the line you want to cross. We don't want to be fake about it. We don't want tokenism. If our Brighton campus is 80% white because it's in a community that's 80% white, like, we don't need to manufacture a stage, full of people of color. Right. But we need to acknowledge justice and righteousness in all of our services. And when we can, we need to show what we are saying actually matters and what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's the intentionality. It comes back to, are we intentional? And I loved your word about token, and we can be that way. We can show images on our website of diversity, but then we don't really actually match that up with what we look like when we gather. Or we can be intentional about connecting people in, but not pulling into leadership. I love those first 3 P's, really, that population, and then participation, and then, but really, where's the power shift, right? And how do we begin to empower leaders? Brad, you have been a capable leader for a long time. And you're African American, and you've been in a white church. You started in a white. I've always loved just your heart around people. Give me, if you don't mind, peel back the layer. What's that been like for you, just personally?
It's been fine. It's like I think for me personally, I feel like racism's kind of like a bad time. If you look for it, you're gonna find it. But what I know is the majority of people, while sinful, are trying to be good. I believe when I see racism in my life, more often than not, it's incompetence. It's not malice. And so I don't need to fight back towards it. I just need to educate. And so that's the role I kind of take. And some people feel like that itself is aggressive or some kind of microaggression, that you have to educate people. But that's what I do as a pastor. I educate people daily on righteous living in a myriad of facets of their finances and their relationships, and race is one of those as well, in my opinion.
That's a tweetable line. It's incompetence, not malice. I mean, I think you ought to write a book around that one, because I actually think you have a point there. I think we tend to view people from our own weaknesses, our own vantage point, our own, and then that shows up in a lot of behavioral stuff. So, I think today, again, the reminder from Efrem about being intentional about this, but it's being intentional, and that starts with me. I can't help my church be intentional if I'm not intentional. I love a challenge I received a decade ago was, what does my dinner table look like? And so it starts, with us as individuals choosing to be intentional. Brad, we're going to wrap up here. Any one last word for leaders, pastors, just in a practical way here?
If I could give one last word, and one last this mindset to have through this whole season, through COVID, through racial, whatever it is, here's what I would give you. What Efrem mentioned, it was Revelation chapter 7, verse 9, which talks about what is going to happen in the future. And what is going to happen in the future is multitudes of nations are going to be in the kingdom of heaven, praising God together. That is going to happen. We already won this. We already beat this. Now, to my white brothers and sisters, that doesn't mean you say, oh, we already won it, I don't have to do anything anymore. No. The efforts you put in place are what's going to make that happen in the revelation that John saw. And to my black brothers and sisters, or brothers and sisters of color, that doesn't mean like, then it's all going to be fine. No, we need to be graceful and forgiving through this as well. But all of it, if you're a follower of Jesus and you believe in the Bible, we should do all this in the posture and the mindset that it already happened. John saw it. The nations will be together in the kingdom. So let's just keep working towards the goal that is coming.
You just preached, man. Just like I'm gonna come to Jesus now. So, Brad, love you, love your leadership. Thanks for joining me today. And don't forget, all of us out there, Ephesians 2:10 remains true for every one of us. That you're God's workmanship, created in Christ, to do the good things He's prepped in advance for you to do. So do those good things today. See you on the next Spirecast. God bless.